So the name Millsong Bakery comes from our desire to use fresh milled, stone milled flour, put it right front and center in the name, keep us accountable to that. And song just is because music is really my first love, and I wanted to just have something to remind me of that. Back of the bread is the flour, and back of the flour is the mill, and back of the mill is the sun and the rain and God's good will.
Throughout many civilizations, growing, grinding, and baking bread has been foundational to life and culture. Grain to bread has been so present in our life that it is easy to lose track of what it takes to grow, harvest, mill, prepare, and sell grain. How do farmers, processors, and bakers adapt to consumer demand while sustaining sound agricultural and production practices? This is a story to help you understand how the grain farmer, the miller, and the baker are innovating and collaborating to bring bread and grain products to the consumer in today's market.
This is a home bakery, and I'm a baker here at Millsong Bakery. My wife and I started this bakery with the help of our community. Our desire was to connect local farms with fresh milled flour and fresh baked bread, naturally leavened, without using any commercial yeast, without any of the things that make bread harder to digest. So trying to make a bread that's more similar to what would have been eaten about 100 years ago. Each week I get the flour ready, I scale out my ingredients, and I get my sourdough culture ready. Get up real early, get in here and try to mix that first dough. And then I'll mix the second dough and the third dough immediately after that. And then I'll put those all the way through to their shaping. I'm in here until the evening, but it's one big day of production. Some of the ways that things are done for a very good reason, and not necessarily having to stick with all of them. Innovation is still important too, but just a big respect for tradition. Yeah, if we don't keep the traditions going and active, we lose something about them. We can still keep them in a book or read about them sometimes, but if you don't keep them going, you can't really keep them alive. And the way we make this kind of bread here is going to be different than the way it was made in France, or the way it's made in DC, or the way it's made in Richmond, because our climate is different and our context is different and our wheat is different. One of the biggest traditional practices that I was inspired by was hand mixing. How to hand mix, how to use your hands. By the end of the mixing, the bread is well developed, and it's just because the way you do it ends the dough up in a certain way. And you can't mimic what's done by hand with a mixer, with a spiral mixer or double arm diving mixer or whatever. I would love to have all my wheat and spelt and all my grains come from Rockingham County, right here, or the neighboring counties. The process for working with local grains and fresh milled flour is totally different than buying bread flour, because those flours are formulated by different mills to be exactly the same every time, to perform the same every month, every year. So the process of using local grains means we have to sort of feel out the harvest. So you have to be on your toes, really observing and really seeing how it's reacting. All of our breads are naturally leavened, I say. I prefer to call them naturally leavened than sourdough because they're not necessarily sour. I try to keep the fermentation kind of gentle. People want to know about that. Are they naturally fermented? Are they from organic farms? Is it organic wheat? And it is all organic wheat, or from no spray farms. The thing people don't know a lot about is the stone milling. Like, all of our flour is stone milled, fresh milled, the same week that we make the bread. So that's really important, because the way a stone mill works is totally different than the way a roller mill works. The roller mill separates the three parts of the grain. There's starch, there's bran, and there's germ. And the germ is really nutritious and oily. Those three different ingredients get separated and never get put back together. And if you do try to put them back together, there's all kinds of challenges of rancidity and different things. One famous miller named Joe Vanderleet said, "No one can put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Once you've taken it all apart, it's all a mess." But what the stone mill does is it sort of presses and pummels all those three different ingredients together. And even if you sift it after that process, all you can get is the biggest pieces of bran. There's tons of small pieces of bran, and all the germ is still stuck inside the flour. And you end up with this, even sifted stone milled flour is this kind of brownish gold color, rather than being a bleached white color. So those are two of the ways that these kinds of breads are just much more digestible. For now, all of our sales are either direct to a consumer through our CSB subscription or at the farmer's market. So our biggest percentage of our sales is at the Harrisonburg Farmers Market. It's just an amazing market. We're living off of the earnings from the market. So the customers can either pick their bread up right here, or they can pick up at the farmer's market, or we drop off in several different neighborhoods around Harrisonburg. Yeah, I feel like I am connected to, I don't know, like over 100 families, 150 families in town. I feel like I have a little bit of their story. I know what kind of breads they like. I know how many kids they have. At the end of that big day, I feel happy because often it's a really good day at the market. People just cheer you up. People just bring all their happy, excited energy. They're just happy to see you there. And I just feel great after I get done with the market.
This mill was originally built in 1794. It was built when everything was wood. The water wheel was wood, the shafts were wood and all. In about 1845, the mill was upgraded to the steel water wheel and the steel gears and shafts and everything in the mill. And the new millstones were put in. The millstones that we're using today were installed in 1845. We're still grinding it the same way. We move it in the mill a different way, but it's a labor-intensive operation. You just don't walk over to the wall and turn a switch on and this mill starts operating. It's very labor-intensive.
We are the last production water-powered mill in Virginia, and we mill grain to order from local farms. It's a very prominent landmark. We like to joke, and it may actually be true, that it is the tallest building in Nelson County. We've yet to find a taller one. So on an ordinary mill week, we'll have, sometimes thousands of pounds of grain will come in through that door. We'll send it up the elevator over here, which is powered by the water wheel. It'll go up, we'll kind of inspect it, maybe bag some of it for later. And what happens is the grain comes down out of this chute, falls into the hopper. At that point, it'll go through our blower, down below the stones, up into a sifter, where it gets sifted into different products depending on what we're milling, and then into bins to be bagged for wholesale orders, retail orders. I mean, that's part of the reason the mill is like 4 stories, because what you want to try and do, and what we use that elevator for, is get the grain up as high as possible, and then use gravity to do as much to it as we need to before it gets ground. But every story that it drops is another opportunity to manipulate that grain to prepare it for grinding.
While you see the water wheel turning in the background, as we are grinding, there's 3 variables. One is the flow of the grain going into the stone. The other variable is the speed that the stone turns, and the third is the difference in the height of the 2 stones, which gives you the texture, how coarse or fine it is. And those variables are not just a turn of the knob, Because today they're one thing, tomorrow they're something entirely different. Because of the humidity, the temperature, it is a constant monitoring of this process while it's working.
We buy our grain from local farms, mostly within a few hours of us here in Virginia, kind of showcasing the region's agriculture. Mostly small farmers, some even harvest by hand. Once we source grain from a farmer, we just try and maintain that connection and get a steady input from them. A lot of our highest volume customers are bakers, so we really just try and keep an open dialogue with them about what they're doing and how the bread is changing as they use more or less of our flour, because we want to encourage them to use more and more of local stone mill flour. Keep a relationship with them if there's something that they see about the flour that they think could be better, or that they like what they're seeing, and they encourage us about how we could improve. As the miller is sort of like the quintessential middleman. We're really working on both sides between the farmers and the bakers, and trying to keep that dialogue, because for a long time now the farmers and the bakers have not been in any kind of communication, and so we're really trying to open that channel by doing what we do.
So our mission, if you go back far enough anyway, I guess I'd say our mission is to kind of take care of the earth, take care of everything we've been entrusted with. So the organic wheat comes into that because we grow that as part of our cropping rotation, and we grow corn, we grow soybeans, we grow forages for our milking herd. And the wheat works really nice in our cropping rotation because it is a winter annual, and it breaks up the summer annual cycle with the corn and the soybeans. We started growing wheat when we started doing more organic cropping, and we just needed something to fit into this crop rotation system. And it also serves as a good food source, energy source for our cattle, for dairy cows. And so we were doing that for a number of years, growing feed grade wheat. A couple years ago, Nicolas Malas approached us and asked, hey, I was looking for a local source of wheat to make bread. And he asked if we would, consider selling him some wheat. And I said, yeah, sure. But ours is soft bread winter, and he's like, no, that's what I'm looking for. And so, yeah, it's been a good relationship. It's been fun to have that personal connection, between the producer and also the baker in there. And that it's local, that it's somebody I know, it's just fun to see the final product of something that we grew. What made it really work nice is we were already cleaning some seed. We were cleaning wheat because we would save some for seed. One of the challenges of being organic is that we need to use all organic inputs. And so we use organic seed, we have to use organic approved fertilizers, and sometimes the seed sourcing can be difficult. Like I can't find seed, or maybe I can find seed, but I can't find seed that hasn't been treated with fungicides or something. And so we were saving our own seed and we were running it through a cleaner. And so it worked really nice, because when Nico approached me and said, hey, do you have any wheat? I was like, yeah, we have some. We've already cleaned it and everything. So it was good to go. It was ready. All he had to do was grind it and bake it. So that's what I've liked about this relationship with Nico, is just, it's all very local. It's from local soils, local farmers, going to a local bakery, going to local tables. And it keeps everything right here in the community. What fascinates me about interest in the farm to table movement is that it creates these relationships between the producers, between the farmer and the baker in this case. With Millsong Bakery, that again, there's closer connections between who's making the food, who's growing the food, and who's consuming the food. And I think there is a lot of potential for growth, and that it probably will be a growing area, because as we as a society think more about our health, think more about lifestyle, sometimes we realize what we're lacking. We're lacking some of those connections, with where things come from, or who's producing it. And there's a story behind it, and I think a lot of times, we resonate with that, there's somebody on the other end of this chain, and I want to know more about that, or I want to support that. And so I think there's a lot of potential for more local connections in food, both because the consumer has the interest in it, just simply because of the relationship within the community. I want to buy Nico's bread because I know Nico, and the bread's great, but it's also because, it creates that connection between, me and him, and between others in the community.